Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello, and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. This is the podcast where we talk about communication, presentation skills, leadership, and today, gratitude. I really wanted to do an episode about gratitude, so I got my friend Dortha Hise to come as a guest. Before I get into describing her, though, let me invite you to see how your presentation skills are doing by taking our free 4-minute quiz at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where in 4 minutes you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition that you deserve. And if you score high enough, you will get a possibility of a free conversation with me to discuss your assessment results. So my guest today is Dortha Hise, and she's someone I've known for several years. I watched her go through a difficult period and come out of it shining with flying colors. And she knows a great deal about gratitude and survival and daily gratitude practices. So I asked her to come and talk on the podcast. The official bio is Dortha L. Hise is an international best-selling author, founder, and chief overwhelm solver of Pretty Smart Virtual Services, as well, which is a full-service coaching and project management firm specializing in rescuing clients from overwhelm. She's also the director of adventure at Summit to Your Success, which is a choose-your-own-adventure-focused healing technique where she helps others to learn about the healing power of nature. Dortha loves helping her clients choose their adventures by freeing them up from their to-do lists. After enduring multiple devastating personal losses, Dortha lost her voice, literally. She thought it was a simple case of laryngitis or bronchitis. As it turned out, it wasn't that simple. She was diagnosed with a neurological condition called abductor spasmodic dysphonia. This condition prevented Dortha from using the phone or speaking normally or being easily heard in a room that had a lot of ambient noise. While this presented challenges to Dortha, she's grateful for this experience because it has heightened her sense of hearing, most importantly, her ability to listen deeply. Always the positive thought leader, Dortha remained a high achiever through circumstances that would have knocked down many without feeling overwhelmed. She understood the mindset of high achievers fully and how to optimize their businesses for maximum performance. However, she observed that the overwhelm didn't always go away. After going on a 3-day backpacking trip in 2015, she could fully experience the healing power that nature brought to her. She'd done it naturally with techniques that develop both strategically and intuitively. So she set an intention to be open to whatever she was meant to receive on that trip. When she returned home, she understood that to be what expanded her resilience, and that the final act of letting go brought the ultimate antidote to overwhelm. Dortha, now a certified coach, teaches others to do the same in Choose Your Own Adventure Healing Portal, which is bringing about entire mind shifts and personal transformation for those who lead helping them serve the world at their best. Dortha has a lot to say. She does have her voice back now, and she's so full of wisdom. I know that you'll enjoy the conversation. On to the interview with Dortha Hise. Dortha Hise, I'm so happy to have you as a guest on Speakers Who Get Results. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad. I was thinking, who could I get to talk about gratitude? And because I like to do a gratitude episode every year at Christmas time, particularly. Everybody talks about gratitude at Thanksgiving, and it's an international podcast. Not everybody does Thanksgiving, but
True.
Everybody at least knows what the end of the year, solstice, Christmas, etc. That whatever holiday you're going to celebrate that celebrates the returning of the light, also a good chance to be grateful. So, and you have a really interesting story. Before I get into my questions, though, let me ask you, if you were to interview someone who's no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
I would want to interview John Muir, and that's because of my love of nature.
Okay, and for our international listeners, tell us who John Muir was.
He was, an avid outdoors person and an activist who helped get Yosemite to be the national park that it is today, Yosemite National Park. And I also believe and he had some other foundational work that he did in like the activism space for really accessibility to outdoors, I would think is how I could kind of sum it up.
So making it possible for ordinary people to get out into nature.
Yes.
I have to say that some friends of mine who do a lot of hiking went to Yosemite in November, and my one friend posted, "We were prepared for Yosemite to be a disappointment because it's so well known. We were wrong." So yeah, it's really quite something. Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
So what would you ask John Muir? What would you like to talk to him about?
I would want to chat with him about all the various treks he did, the time difference of when he did them 100 years ago to now, to see where we could still get to, because I don't think all of the places that he explored are easily accessible now. Like, he was doing cross-country type exploring, and typically in Yosemite especially, they really want you to stay on the trails. So I would be curious to know kind of what inspired him to go on these treks, and then how did that affect the rest of his life? Because I know when I get out in nature, it affects all the areas of my life.
Yes. Well, one of the other reasons I wanted to invite you to the show is because I am most powerfully feel gratitude when I'm out in nature. And I just think, I'm so small and the world is so big, and how lucky I am to have been born in this form on this planet at right now, this day.
Yeah.
So I also, when I get back home, I'm grateful for hot water and coffee. So, electricity, things like that. Easy hot water and coffee.
Yes.
Didn't used to be easy. So I'm very aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Dortha, you've had a really interesting and difficult trek to get to this place of gratitude and rebirth. Can you tell us, how did you get here? What was the timeline from when it all fell apart to now?
Yeah, so it was about 10 or so years ago, and I began with the unexpected death of my mother. And then 3 months later, my great-grandmother passed away. And a few months later, another friend's husband lost his battle with cancer. The following month, one of my best friends from high school lost her battle with multiple sclerosis. And that path and trajectory continued for about 2 years. And a total of 28 people passed away during that time frame. Then in the same window of time, I was diagnosed with a vocal disorder that pretty much prevented me from speaking much above a whisper. And that was kind of when, as you asked, how it all fell apart. And I immediately began journaling. I was called to that. I felt it in my heart to, as soon as my mom passed away, I knew that I wanted to journal my experience. And I was feeling called that I would want to write a book about the journey. And at the time, when it was only my mom who had passed away, I thought, okay, it's going to be around this concept of a difficult relationship and how to grieve the loss of a difficult relationship. And over those 2 years, that trajectory totally changed, and it became about finding joy in any loss. And it morphed from not just people passing away, also around pet loss, the unnatural things that I talk to people about, where like they had lost a child. That was something that was not really even something that had been in my mind because I don't have children. So that conversation definitely changed how I approached the context of my book. And then I also, there was a piece around like partner loss in a business, for example, or you lose a big client. So I was starting to realize it wasn't just about the physical death. There's also like, in metaphorical terms in your business or in relationships, it isn't always just about death. It is sort of the closing of a chapter could be considered like a death. And so I spent the next however many months it was writing and journaling, and then decided I was going to put it all into a book. And that was published at the end of 2014. And a few months later, my husband sent an email to me and asked if I wanted to join this person on a backpacking trip. It was a colleague of his from work. And I had always been drawn to the idea of backpacking and thought, oh, yeah, it sounds fun. And so we committed to doing it. And it was a 3-day, about 45-mile trek in the Sierra Nevadas here in California. And it was spectacular and beautiful and really hard and amazing. And that was the turning point for me when I got home. I just had this, real sense of peace about everything I had gone through in that 2 years. Like, not that it was like for a reason. At the same time, it was like, okay, I can do this. I'm okay. I'm going to make it.
And the loss of your voice, which was the other thing you didn't mention, which was huge.
Oh, yeah. Totally forgot about that.
Yes. Well, we've known each other for a long time, you and I. And I remember that it was several years where you only communicated by text. And it was, as someone who speaks for a living and listens for a living, the thought of losing your voice was just terrifying. You have reinvented yourself. You call yourself the naturepreneur. I love that. Yes. Talk to us about the practice of gratitude. We've all heard about gratitude journals. For some of us, it's easy to keep going or take it for granted, or just to lose track. You put the book down and you forget, and you lose the rhythm. Tell us again, remind me again, because it's something that I'm not as consistent with as I'd like to, the value of having a journal, a gratitude journal.
Yes, there's, I think, a lot of things that a gratitude journal can do in our lives. One is it's a great way to start the day, writing down 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for, which is one of the things I do. And what that does is it then primes my brain to look for other things to be grateful for. So it's not just like, oh, I'm writing these 5 things down and, it's willy-nilly. I am thinking about them, like you mentioned earlier about, having hot coffee when you get home after being out on the trail, for example. Sometimes hot coffee is one of the things I'm grateful for. And it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something small. Like, a lot of times it's something to do with my relationship with my husband. Like we got to spend quality time together. We got to do something like this, or we got to spend quality time with someone else. Those are just the things that come to my mind, and I jot them down. And then at the end of the day, or at some point in the day, if I'm having a bad day, I can grab that journal and pull it open and read any given day something I was grateful for. And it helps me to retrain my brain from being in a maybe spiral or anxious thoughts or wherever I am in the moment to get back to gratitude. So there are a lot of different things that gratitude, awareness, and practice can do. And I think it goes around kind of setting intentions and, being really intentional about the practice.
Yeah. Talk to us about the power of setting an intention. Why is that important?
Yeah. Well, I think before we started the show, you and I had chatted about what it was about the backpacking trip for me that really kind of marked that change for me in my heart and feeling peace all over, was that I set an intention before we left. I said, I'm going to be open to receive whatever I'm meant to receive on this trip. And I repeated it through the whole trip. And I attribute the transformation that I experienced on that trip to being open to receiving it. And every trip I do now and have done since then, which has been probably close to thousands of miles now, has always started with setting that same intention. And I think that the power of intention does a lot of things. One is it opens up what's possible. It lets the universe, God, creator, divine, whoever it is that is your guiding star, lets them know that you're activating that possibility and opening yourself to creating what's possible. So I think it's kind of, again, a multi-prong thing.
Let me go on then and ask you about self-care within your business, including working with a team. How does that count as self-care?
Great question. I have, since all of the loss that I endured and the loss of my voice, I really had to come into a space where I gave myself permission to say that asking for help was a form of self-care. And it was once I gave it that framework that I no longer felt like, oh, okay, I can't do it all. I was going to a negative place about it. So I don't know if your audience can sympathize with that. Maybe not. I think
we've all been there. Yes.
And so one of the things that I always tell my clients is you don't have to wear the cape all the time. You can take the cape off. And that is to be, the superpower, the superhero. You can take the cape off and be your normal self. It's totally fine. And I think the power that comes with using a team is multifaceted. One is that you can hand off things that you're not great at, things that make you spin your wheels, things that take up too much of your time, all of those kinds of things, which then frees you up to do the things that you're good at. And that's one of the things that I start with my clients is, okay, let's make a list of all the things that you do. Now go back and circle the things only you can do. So those are the things you cannot delegate. Everything else can be delegated. And it's so surprising. People see that list and they're like, holy moly, I can delegate so much. And they're not aware of that because likely they've been in their business and they've had their head down so long that they don't realize, oh, just because it takes me 5 hours to put an email together doesn't mean that I ought to be doing that. Like that's not the norm, and you can hire somebody that might take them a half hour or something to do it on their time. So it's freeing you up 5 hours of your time of frustration and all of that. So I would say that it's really around getting the support you need to hand things off. It also is allowing you to build trust because if you're like me, when I was a kid, I was abandoned 3 times before I was 5 years old. And as a result of that, I learned the power of a support network and the power of having a team when I got into my adult years. I certainly didn't know it when I was 5. It took me a lot longer to come back around to that. But I think those are some of the things that can really kind of facilitate a very strong relationship, a very strong team. And if you have transparency in the relationship with communication and expectation being 2 of the key components, it can avoid a lot of frustration and heartache down the road as you're, starting to build that relationship with your team.
Well, in any teams, any leader who's working with a team, whether it's entrepreneurs or whether it's within an organization, allowing yourself to delegate, letting it be possible that someone else will solve it not the same way you solved it, and that's still okay.
Yeah.
That was a hard one for me to learn back in the day. I was like,
No. Power control, keeping hold of it? No.
yes, well, I'm right. Anyway, my way is going to be the right way to do it. So I had to learn that was an early one I had to learn that was hard for me.
Yes.
So I love that self-care, to delegate and trust, trust that someone else will do it okay. They'll do it their way. And certainly your team will be happier if you're not micromanaging. So
for sure. Yes.
For sure.
Let's get that on a t-shirt.
Yes. Yes. In terms of self-care and delegating, it also allows you to take breaks, right?
It sure does.
Yes. And to set boundaries.
Yes.
Because
and hold them.
Yeah. With all these thousands of miles that you have hiked, you've also kept a business running all this time.
Yep.
What would you say to those of us, I'm in this category sometime, who say, yeah, but I just have to get this other thing done. I'll give up my Sunday and do that, or I'll give up my weekend and do that, because there's so much still to do.
Of course.
What do you say?
I say those things will be there when you get back to the office. Mm-hmm. And unless someone's going to die as a result of you not doing it, it's probably going to be okay to wait for a few days. And likely what most people experience, myself included, is when I get that time to unplug and disconnect, it allows me to recharge so that when I plug back in, I'm stronger, brighter, I have more creativity, more flow. And that has been the case for my clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Why is it important to then get out into nature or bring nature into your home? Your home?
I think as we have evolved as humans over time, we have gotten to be less and less outdoors. And, like I look at my parents and my husband's parents, and they're very much still people that get out regularly. And, they're doing really well, I think, because of it. And then I look at people my own age and their kids. And, some of those kids are having kids now too. So I'm looking at all of them and they're like on the phone and the iPad and the computer at a very, very early age. So they're really kind of curbing that go play in the street kind of thing like that I grew up with, like not literally play in the street, but,
go play outside.
Play outside.
Yes.
And so I have really embraced sharing ways that are easy for people to get out. I realize that I am a little bit crazy in getting out and backpacking 45, 50, 75 miles. I understand that. Not everybody's cup of tea. I do like to share ways that people can get out that are easy or bring things in. For example, if they live in a concrete jungle, right? So they can't get out and get that real benefit of like seeing trees or, interacting with a bird or a squirrel or whatever. So, some easy ways to get out if you do have space is to put your feet in dirt and just kind of wiggle your toes back and forth, do something called grounding. And what that does is energetically recharges you at the cellular level by reconnecting in with the earth. Something else you can do is if you're not allergic to grass, lay in the grass and look up at the clouds, look for shapes like we did when we were kids. That's a really fun one to do if you have children of your own as well. Have them join you, have your partner join you. It's fun. My husband and I do it all the time now when we're out in the car. He's like, oh, hey, look at that cloud. It looks like a blah, blah, blah. So it's now a practice that we do, not just, oh, I'm feeling stressed out, I need to get outside. It's like kind of a daily thing that we do whenever there are clouds. And then there are some ways that you can bring nature in if you don't have the space near you, is things like bringing in plants. There are different types of plants that are good for certain things. So like you could have a snake plant, you could have a spider plant, all different kinds of things that you can bring into your home. And I actually, I should share I have an infographic that talks about different plants you can put in different places of your home for them to have their maximum benefit. The other component to that that's really good for our mental wellness is talking to them. I know it sounds crazy, but talking to them, putting positivity into the air is actually good for us as well as, I believe, for the plants. I think that they absorb that positivity as well as us giving it. And one other little thing, if you can hug a tree, that's like one of my huge like go-to moves for a quick uplifting experience. It just like, it's like hugging a grandparent.
Mm-hmm. Hug a tree. I love it.
Yeah.
There's a reason why environmentalists are called tree huggers, right?
It's true. Yep.
Yeah. Can you tell us a story of a client you've helped get past the stress like this by getting outside?
Yeah, actually, a client, we're actually no longer working together, not for any other reason than she just changed directions. But she was somebody that when we started, she was so uptight and stressed that she literally, talk about micromanaging. I mean, it was bad. She would send me something and then like I don't even think it was a few hours later, she would like send me a follow-up email and then she would send me more emails. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work if you can't hand it off and at least give me a few hours to maybe even see the email you sent. Sometimes there are other things I'm working on and I don't just sit here waiting for your email to come in.
Right,
So
exactly.
that was part of the first piece. And then I had taken a few trips. Every once in a while our trips will coincide with like taking a Friday or a Monday off, for example. And she had asked me about it. And so we started having these conversations where she was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting." And I started encouraging her to like kind of tap into what was interesting to her, like how she could move her body. And she was really attracted to yoga. So I was like, great, like start doing some yoga. Maybe you can even do it outside, in your backyard or something. And she started doing that. And then I encouraged her. So it's baby steps. It's always, always, always baby steps. It's never just go on a 50-mile hike.
The first time out.
Not the
Yes.
first time out. So first it was yoga. And then I encouraged her to take her laptop with her, but not turn it on the weekend.
Ah,
And that was a tough one for her because she always took it with her and she would always be working. I would get these emails from her on Monday morning that were like, 11 o'clock at night on Saturday. And I'm like, oh, come on.
yeah.
Just so it was small steps like that. And then once she was able to do that, there's a huge amount of freedom in bringing your laptop and not turning it on. Having it with you is a security blanket. Now, can you leave it at home for the whole weekend? Right? It becomes a progression. And maybe you can, maybe you can't. I think it's incredibly freeing once you get to that point, but it's baby steps for sure. It's not just, flying right into the fire.
Yes, right. Well, Dortha Hise, this has been really delightful and fun. I know you've created some tools that sort of help remind us about these useful concepts.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the cards that you made.
Yeah, I have, I don't have one next to my desk. That's an unusual feature. I usually have them right next to me. I have 3 card decks that I designed with photos from various trips we've taken around Northern California. And I paired them with a powerful mantra from one of my workouts and then put an action item on them. What I wanted them to be is a tool for people to actually do something. I wanted them to be pretty and I wanted them to inspire someone to get into action. So a card might say something like, I actually have one here on my desktop, so I'll share what it says. From the Positive Change deck, it says, I bring passion, intention, and strength to everything I do today. And the action is set an intention, dig deep, and tap into your passion to achieve it. So those are the kinds of things that someone can expect from the 3 different card decks. One is motivation, one is attitude, and one is positive change.
I love that. I love that. And we will put in the show notes how to find those, but tell us what your website is.
It's Nature Guides to Self-Healing.com. I know that's a mouthful, so it's probably easier to click on it from the show notes. And also summittoyoursuccess.com.
Summit as in
Summit
climbing the summit of a mountain.
Yep.
a noun that has become a verb. Yes, in climbing circles. Great. If somebody's listening to us and says, I need your help, what is the first thing I could do? Leave us with one thing that we could do having right now when we finish this interview.
Well, I'll give you two things. One will be business related and one will be get outside related. Okay. So that list I talked about making, grab a piece of paper or a notepad. It's on your computer. It's generally more effective if you can write it out. All the things that you do and feel responsible for in your business, and then circle the things only you can do. What's left are things that can be delegated and ought to be delegated because they're probably causing you stress and frustration. The other thing is for getting outside. Just go outside and absorb some vitamin D from the sun. It's a great way to recharge yourself and it feels great too. There's a reason why cats sleep in the windowsill with the sun on them. It feels amazing.
Yes. And even if it's a cloudy day.
Even if it's a cloudy day. Yep.
Get outside and breathe. Even a rainy day will have clean air you'll be breathing. So
not the recycled air inside.
Exactly. Dortha, thank you so very much for having been my guest. I'm very happy to have this be to talk about gratitude and all of this. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. If you enjoyed this, tell your friends, spread the news, share it on social media. Please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a good review. That's the one that people notice. And then you can reach out to Dortha Hise and to myself, wherever you're listening to this podcast, or LinkedIn, YouTube, all the places. We're easy to find. We've loved having you as a guest, Dortha. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.